Greetings, beloved. Thank you for joining us today. Have you ever wondered why so many women are not equipped for marriage? It's because being a woman does not make you a bride, no more than being a woman makes you a mother. As with so many things in life, there's a process that leads us to our desired end. If your desired end is to be a bride according to biblical standards, then you have tuned in at the perfect time. Chapter 2 of the book of Titus tells us that the aged women should take the younger women through the process of becoming not just brides for a day, but brides for a lifetime. So stay tuned for more of Bridesmaid with me, your host, Renee Bolden.
Greetings to everyone who is present here and those who will tune in at whatever time. We're always grateful for the opportunity to have these discussions, and so we are going to jump right into it. As I explained last week, we're going to have just a brief segment to talk to our younger sisters, our younger daughters and granddaughters and nieces, to give them an opportunity to be a little bit more hands-on during this discussion and to answer a question. But I'm first going to just address really quickly what answers they gave last week. And I do hope that parents, that you paid attention to the answers that were given, and I hope you really put a lot of thought into it. I'm not going to go one by one. I just kind of compile the answers in my mind, and I want to say something about it, something that wherever we are in life, we have to pay attention to why we want to do things, why we are doing things, and whether or not our reason for doing it is going to yield the fruit that we are actually looking for in that. More importantly, for us as professing believers, we want to make sure that our reason for doing anything has a scriptural basis and reference for it, that our mindsets about everything we do is really in line with the Word of God. So that's very important. So we had several answers to the question that was asked last week to the young sisters about whether or not they want to be married and why. One of the main answers that I heard was, I want to have children, or something along those lines. We had one answer that I thought was very peculiar, and that was, I don't want to get whippings anymore. So if somehow she's relating that being an adult, I imagine being married is being an adult, and with that comes no whippings. Now, what that translates to me, of course, is no consequences, number one, for my actions, and or I'm not really wrong in what I'm doing, so I can't wait until I don't have to deal with the repercussions of, I don't know, their frustration or whatever. However she's reading it, she's not really, and this is for anybody who maybe you asked your daughter this question, why do you want to be married? And it was anywhere near similar to that answer. I don't want to because maybe I want to be able to do what I want to do, in essence, is how you can summarize that. In other words, I'm not accountable. I'm not being held responsible for my actions. But most importantly, I think that particular answer just immediately sent a bell off in my mind that she's not fully understanding that she's wrong, that she's not making the right connection between her actions and the consequences. Somewhere in her mind, there's a disconnect about why she's getting whipped, because the thought is not to change, but let me hurry up and become an adult so I just simply don't have to deal with it. Except that's not even a reality. And we know that. And these are the types of things that we definitely have to be able to make sure our children are able to make the connection that your actions caused this reaction, hence this consequence that you're dealing with. So the way to not have that is to change and allow the Lord to change your character. Because the rules don't change, the standards don't change, the boundaries don't change. It's the character that has to change so that you're not experiencing these things. So whatever level of discipline, I'm sure, she mentioned being spanked, whippings, being spanked, but I'm sure there's a wide variety of things that come with discipline. It can be having privileges taken away. It could be maybe writing lines like we used to do at school. We had to stand at the chalkboard and write 100 times, I will not talk in class. I will not talk in class. We had to do that. That was the thing. So it can be any number of disciplinary actions that take place, but here's what the Bible have to say about it. The law is not a terror to those who are abiding by it, basically. If I'm not running stop signs or if I'm not speeding, it doesn't matter to me if there are 100 police lined up on the side of the road because I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm not afraid of that. So I'm not trying to run from the law. And so it should be, with our children. As I said, that answer was quite revealing. And I hope her parents will talk more to her, especially when it comes to discipline and the things that she's doing. Maybe she doesn't see the big deal, which is exactly what this portion of the series is about, seeing what's wrong with what's wrong. And sometimes we don't see things as a big deal and we pass that on to our children. Oh, what's the big deal? Why are you making such an issue out of this? So when it's time to discipline them, that's the way they're seeing it. What's the big deal? Why is this an issue? Why does this cause me to not be able to watch television, or cause me to not be able to go out and play, or cause me to do whatever? And so they need to be able to make the connection to that. There was another answer that, and I'm just going to talk about that briefly before we talk about the children that everyone wants. The other answer was about proving my womanhood. Now, this is something that falls right in line with the insecurities that we talked about, how a lot of women end up insecure. And of course, we related it to food. And I'm just going to say this. When we get to the point that we are ready to be married, when we are ready to be a wife, when we're ready for someone to choose to spend the rest of their lives with us, we don't have anything to prove. That mindset certainly is rooted in pride. I can say this, and this is just for anybody who may be thinking, I have something to prove to somebody. I don't have to prove my worth or my validation or any of that. I don't have to prove to somebody that I made it in life. I don't have to prove that I'm capable of actually having a successful marriage. If my heart and my mind is in the right place about marriage and why God intended for it to be and what I want to get out of it, how fruitful I want it to be, then it is simply about me fulfilling my purpose as a wife. It's not about me proving anything to anybody. And so that doesn't even come into play. People will see what they will see about our lives, but we don't set out to prove anything to anybody. It's not even, it has nothing to do with a public display of anything to anybody. It's internal, it's personal, it's intimate, it's uniquely you for what God designed you to do with the man that he designed for you. And that's the way we should see it, that we don't have to think about other people concerning it. We don't have to think, oh yeah, I'm going to show this person, this one dumped me, but I got accepted by this one, or this person, told me I couldn't do this, but I'm going to show them. And we simply cannot make marriage or anything in life about proving anything to anybody on any level, because it will fail miserably if that is our mindset behind it. And the last thing I want to address is the most common answer that I heard was about children. I want to get married because I want to have children. I think one child said, I want a husband and children. And I thought that was quite an indication of how she sees marriage. And I think every one of the details of what we hear in their answers, it's really important, because there are a lot of women all over the world. And I'll use this term YouTube influencer. I don't blogger or whatever. I don't know what the real appropriate term is for this lady, but she did a whole segment on how women will do this thing. They go out of their way. We have this instinct to want to be chosen by a man. We will fix ourselves up. We will do what it takes to get a man's attention, and we go all out the way to do things to attract the man to us, to be chosen. We do these things, and I'm not saying anything's wrong with that because we're supposed to. And I don't mean from a standpoint of witchcraft, but we are supposed to desire to be desired by the opposite sex. That is perfectly normal and natural. But oftentimes what happens with that is it is used as a manipulation tactic where I want your attention, I want to get you, and then they get married. Women will get married, and then once they're married, they're no longer interested in the man. They just want children whom they can control. The children who will love them the way they need to be loved. The children who will never turn their backs on them. The children who will never disappoint them. The children who will always be a friend to them. So then the focus shifts. And that's the thing we want to watch out for. We want to make sure that our children have a holistic view of what marriage is and that they understand that the family unit is the foundation of the family unit is the marriage. So the relationship with the husband and wife has to be intact. And so our children need to understand that I need to have a husband, not just wanting to get married because I'm looking forward to having children. I want to have children with my husband. And so we want to make sure, I wanted to bring that out. I don't know, and I'm not going to turn it into a full-on discussion with what parents thought about it. You're welcome to share your thoughts in private if you thought about something else. But I did want to share that, for us here and the viewing audience, for the sake of time, we're not going to turn that into a discussion about what everybody's individual thoughts were about that, but we do need to pay attention, and which is why I want you to write down the answers. Have an exclusive notebook for their answers so that you're writing these things down and we're paying attention to where their minds are today, what things need to be addressed, and how it may change over time. So I have another question for them today to answer, to think about. And I did consider maybe giving the question in advance, but I don't want them to be coached, and I don't want them to talk themselves out of what their initial reaction or answer is. So the question for this week, and I guess question in two-part, is for our young people, what do you think is fun about marriage and maybe not so fun when you think of marriage? We need to get a mic. Thank you. Can you think of one thing that you think is fun about marriage or not, and not so fun?
I like to stay with my mommy.
Okay. You have another answer about something that's not so fun?
I don't want to get married.
You said you don't want to? I couldn't understand what you said. Say that again. Do you know what she said? I don't understand what's being said. Good. Can we get in the mic, please? Because I don't know what you all are saying.
I don't want to get married.
Could you repeat what she's saying in the mic so I can understand you, because I don't understand what she's saying?
He said she don't want to get married.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so she said, I like staying with my mommy and I don't want to get married. Okay, Jayla. The question is, what do you think is fun about marriage? If you can think of something that's fun, or maybe this is not so much fun.
Um, what's fun about getting married? What's fun about getting married is Um, that I can cook my husband a meal.
Okay, and can you think of something that you think maybe this isn't so fun? And it's okay if you can't think of anything. You can say, I can't think of anything. That's fine. I'll give you a moment to think about it. Pass the mic over to Ava and let her answer.
I think you can make anything inside marriage fun if you want it to be.
Okay, so can you think of one particular thing that you might call fun concerning marriage, or something that maybe not so great? And again, you may have an answer, you may not. Just something more specific.
I guess cooking for my whole family. I think that would be something that I would really enjoy.
Okay.
And not so fun. I can't think of it.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. Jayla has thought of something.
Going to jail, not so fun.
Okay, well, thank you. I think we all agree with that. You can pass the mic on to some more. Tell me something what you think about marriage. Something that you think of that's fun, or if you can think of something that's not so much fun.
To I want the fun thing I want. That's fun about marriage. I can do my children's hair and cook for my husband, and I can help around the house.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Did you have an answer for something that's maybe not so much fun?
Yes.
Mhm.
And washing dishes.
Okay. Thank you for your honesty. Who's that? Can you think of something that's fun about marriage?
I like to wash. I like to. I like to cook for my children, and I like to get fruit snacks.
What is she saying? Could you repeat what she said in the
She
mic?
said I like to get fruit snacks.
Okay, okay, thank you. Let's pass the mic to Elisha. Something that you think about that is fun about marriage.
I like having a husband.
Mm, can you think of something that's maybe not so fun?
Mm,
Mm,
I don't like having children.
Say that again.
I don't like having children.
Okay. And let's just give Addison a chance to answer about something fun. Can you think of something fun that you can think of about having a mommy and daddy?
I want to get married because I'm about to get children and babies.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sage.
Um, what I think fun is I can have children and make food for my whole family. And what I think is not fun probably will be um probably will be um most of the times always fighting.
hmm I was thinking that someone might say that. Thank you so much for your answer. And I think that's all of the minors. Thank you all for those answers. Now, of course, again, I hope you all wrote these answers down, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I'm just going to say this one thing that we're looking for in these answers, and that is, how are our children viewing marriage based on what they see between their mom and dad, or maybe the marriages around them, whatever's closest to them. Okay, that's very, very important, very important. And we will talk a little bit more in detail about those answers and things. So I thank you all for doing that. And last week, moving on to everyone else who have not spoken yet, besides our little ones, you all had a homework assignment. Did you all give it any thought? We talked about eating habits, and I asked you all to pay attention to how you eat, what your eating habits are. Even pay attention to your children. Did you see something in yourself as you went throughout the week that alarmed you and made you think, even if you don't have children, if you know that you're around children and they're watching you, what kind of things would they learn from watching you eat or being around you throughout the day as you choose a meal? So, did anyone pay particular attention to that or can think of something that you could be perfectly honest with us about to say, hey, I know I need to change this because I've watched myself do this particular thing and it's not good. And maybe I see it in my children, or maybe I see it in children that have been around me and I've influenced them in this way. Anybody at all? Okay. The okay, just get the mic. Okay. You all can put your hands down.
Yes, ma'am. I noticed it was two things that I saw. One was, um, it's hard to, the best way I could describe it is snacking, but in a roundabout way. Almost like, um, eating my food in parts as I'm preparing it or doing things versus just waiting to sit down and eat it all at the same time. That's the best way I could describe it. So it's kind of like you're still snacking, if that makes sense to what I'm saying. And then the one embarrassing thing that I saw, I was like, this is ridiculous, and absolutely I would not want anyone to see me doing this. Is like the way that I get food off of the plate. It was just disgusting and unladylike. Just it like picking at it, or it was just gross. And I don't think I realized I was doing that until you told us to pay attention. I was like, what am I doing? This is so gross. And I was thinking about just briefly like why I was doing it, and I had trained myself in my mind like that was the way that I was like, I'm not letting any food go to waste. And so whatever is there, I'm making sure I'm consuming every bit of it. And then it's like it was kind of like that was the thought process, and like that doesn't make any sense in this context. So that was two things that I noticed that I stopped.
Okay, thank you so much. And I will just kind of talk from that point because I did want to go back and revisit again from last week this idea of being ladylike. It's important that when we're talking about, because it's such a wide range of things that it covers. We're talking about preparing ourselves for marriage, and in that we're also talking about preparing to represent our husbands. And what we're doing, how we do it, is going to be a representation of him. And so we do want to give particular attention. And I would put that under posture. I don't know if I can I kind of visualized a little bit of what she meant about picking at the plate, but I did kind of put that under posture in terms of how we consume our food and whether or not it's ladylike, whether or not it's more of a manly nature. So I want to touch on that also and reiterate. I do want to reiterate this one thing from last week, the insecurities that we talked about. I think everyone got the point, but I do want to emphasize that it goes so far beyond just the weight gain that might happen as a result of bad eating habits. We talked about it a little bit. and that's only, that's only a portion of it. But I think the greater part of what we really need to give attention to is the femininity in how we do things and what we do. One of the things I have here, I'm gonna say this before I continue talking, regarding posture, because I tell you the posture that we have, and that's even in our attitude, it really dictates how we present. And right now, we're not even talking about the general population, the general public, the general society. We're talking about how do we present to a man, our husband, if he's already said I do, or a man who may be considering us as a wife. How do we present? Because there is a posture that says certain things. For an example, if I just kind of throw this out there and I say to you all, if I ask you to change your posture right now, and I give you this word to look like you're angry about something, I'm going to ask you really quickly, change your posture to look like that. And as I say a word, I want you to change your posture to look like you're angry, to look like you don't care. And what if you looked like you're just completely exhausted? Like, I have nothing left to give. I'm just exhausted. And I'm excited about something. And I'm ready to go. I'm anxious to get to where I'm going. So you see, just without you even saying a word, your body language says so much. Our posture says so much. And our posture is very indicative of our attitude. And I want to say this. If you have one look for all of those things, you're in trouble. If you just look the same across the board, you need to change that very quickly. Because what you will look like is stoic and stone-faced and cold-hearted and robotic. So whatever expressions we have, they should have their own definition by way of our body language. If I'm happy, then people should actually know it. If I'm at peace, people should actually know it. I should not have this stoic look on my face or my body language just being stiff all the time to where people have no idea what they're walking into. So that's just an extra posture. It means something because we're saying something. So when we're talking about preparing for marriage, we all, again, back to being of the same judgment and of the same mind, we have to be in agreement that these things matter, right? It matters. Why? Because we set the atmosphere of the home, right? We as wives set the atmosphere. So if I'm walking around like I don't care and I've given up on life and I'm just done and I'm at my wit's end and I'm frustrated and I have nothing else to give, then I'm setting the tone for my home. So if we agree that these things are important, then we need to pay attention to our posture. We need to pay attention to, am I displaying the joy of the Lord and my family is able to see this? Notwithstanding, there are times in life, as we will read in the word, there is a time to be sad, a time to be happy, and I am paraphrasing. There's a time to cry, there's a time to rejoice, there's a time to mourn. So I am not by any stretch of the imagination saying that I should never ever display sadness, because if there is a time to mourn, but the point is we're not mourning everything every day, and so we should not look like it. At some point, someone should know that we actually have the joy of the Lord and that we have peace and that we're happy with life and that we're okay. That should come across in our body language. It should come across in our attitude. It should exude in our person, what life is like for us. Do people think that we're always on the verge of jumping off the cliff? Or do they think they have to, okay, always have, okay, do we need to rescue her today? or they can look forward to you coming and know that you're bringing something positive to the atmosphere whenever you come. So a part of that, like I said, even the eating the food, as was just spoken a moment ago about how we eat posture, which I put this display here because I wanted to demonstrate something that I saw with one of our granddaughters. And if you see your children doing this, you just you absolutely must correct this. If you do it, maybe not knowingly, sometimes we develop habits, and because we've developed them, we don't even realize it anymore. But I'm going to move this. We have here, and I want to say something. For us to have proper eating etiquette, we don't have to have a formal dining setup. You don't even have to know what that is. You don't have to know how to use it. Just know how to use the basic utensils and not eat like an animal is the basic foundational rules of it all. But this is what I saw. But this is what I saw. I am going to pick up this fork here in this plate, and she's sitting at the table, and this is what I see. Scooting food into her mouth. Well, the proper way, as I told her. Like, I was so surprised when I saw that. I had never seen that before, and I was like, child, what are you doing? Don't eat like that. You take your time and you pick up enough food on your utensil with the amount only that can fit in your mouth without falling out or making your jaws look like a squirrel. And you eat it, you don't scrape the fork, and you return it back to your plate until you're ready for more. And I went on and I just told her, like, don't do that. Well, a part of the posture issue was the fact that she was leaning down to the table and not bringing it up. Do you know that that is an indication of a lack of discipline and being impatient if you won't take the time to steady your food on a utensil and bring it to your mouth because you have to hurry up? You have to hurry up and eat. That's what it's a sign of. So we talked about the lack of discipline that comes from just snacking all day, and we don't always make the connection again to how these things play out and what it looks like. But that's one way it looks. But we're just trying to hurry up, trying to hurry, trying to hurry. We're just doing this and not thinking that if you've ever watched an animal eat, their heads are right there at the bowl, and they're just lapping it up. They're not really hardly taking a breath in between. It's just, and so we should not look like that. You know, again, we're talking about preparing for marriage. This is just another hint about it. I know I am not trying to step on anybody's toes. I had to learn the difference between the two myself. Sometimes we're in positions where we're offered a water bottle over a cup, and maybe we don't have a choice but to drink out of it. But I want you all to tell me, when you look at me demonstrate this, what looks more ladylike to you? Is it you see the difference in how that looks. Now, when you're thirsty, you're not thinking about that. Oh, you have a bottle of water, thank you. And we versus. So you see the difference in what that looks like to us. And if, again, we're preparing ourselves to be wives, with that also comes being a lady. It's not just about being married to somebody, but actually showing up and being a lady, being because we want a man to show up, right? When we get married. But as we've talked about these things before, if we show up and we're being manly, then there's no room for him to be a man. So there should be some distinctions between the way certain things are done. I I I had my husband chuckling. I told him about a very brief stint that I had years ago of working at a Dollar General. And when I started working there, I thought I was going to be working as a cashier, which I was. But then after I accepted the position, at the end of the shift, I guess the lady manager started telling me all these things. You all know how they have all that stuff on the outside of the store, all that stuff they have piled up, chairs and bags of charcoal and all of that. She was like, yeah, you're responsible for bringing all of that in at the end of the night. And I was like, so do y'all hire men to work the shift to bring this stuff in to help them? Like, I can't, I'm not picking up all of that heavy stuff, bringing it in the store. You all don't have men to do this? So that was my clue right there that wasn't really going to work for me, because my thought was, and I don't even think I had a mind to just do what you have to do, just drag it, pull it, whatever, put it on a dolly. I was just thinking, I think more so about not compromising my nature. Like, I don't see myself, I can't even pick up a bag of charcoal at home. Those bags are heavy. And then you have all this stuff outside that you want drug in. And I was thinking, you all should probably consider hiring some men to work the night shift or something if that's what has to be done, and not expect. I mean, this is what I'm telling the people. Like, you shouldn't expect ladies to want to have to drag all this stuff in. And I think we have to really think so highly of our femininity that we are looking not to compromise it, we're looking to protect it. That we don't just jump in and do anything at any given moment. We need to think of what does this look like? So of course, like I said, we talked about eating, we talked about food and the posture, and I want to say a little bit more about posture before we get into the next topic. And what I want to say about posture is the sitting, the walking, and the talking. This is something just a couple of weeks ago. I'm observing a husband and wife talking, and the wife she was talking to a group of people, and we were included in that group. And as she was talking, she was doing all of this, doing all of these, hand motions in the air. Her hands were going all over the place. And her husband very jokingly said, if she didn't have hands, she wouldn't be able to talk. And so he made it light, and then she kept going, and he said it a second time jokingly, and then she immediately put her hands in her pockets and continued talking. And I knew instantly that they had had that conversation before. I knew instantly that he did not like that. And of course, my mind instantly went back to how Apostle Bolden had brought that up in a fellowship long time ago, about how it looks aggressive for a woman to use her hands to talk like that. And I was thinking, here we are, those people, as far as I know, they didn't profess to be believers to us, and there was nothing about them that would have made me think that or otherwise. There was nothing about them that stood out to me that would say, oh yes, they're believers. But just a man who don't want his wife throwing up gang signs when she talks, just to be able to express herself. And he apparently, had enough of an issue with it that he said something to remind her, hey, remember we talked about this? Yeah, everybody, she's not really about to punch you in the face. She's just expressing herself, because it doesn't look good to men for a woman to do that. And that's something that I've had to work on, because something I picked up somewhere along the way and started using my hands, and it's like, oh, I need to stop doing that. And so it's one of those things that we have to take note of. What is pleasing to our husband, not what is common in society, what might be deemed acceptable in society, but what is pleasing to my husband. So our posture and when we talk, it's important. When we sit, even, we've talked about it. We've talked about it before, and we need to continue to address those things because, again, if we are preparing our daughters for marriage, we have to be able to see what went wrong with us that we had a hard time correcting once we got into marriage. We have to see what went wrong with other people. And I told this story before, and I'm going to tell it again. This is one of the saddest stories I had ever encountered at that age in my life, at the time that I witnessed this take place. Husband and wife had been together. I think they started dating when she was 14 and he was 17 years old. They dated for the next 10, 12 years. Then they ended up getting married, and they were always around a lot of people because they were in the music industry. So it was always that they were around a lot of married couples, were always around them. And I don't say this to say that he necessarily compared his wife to other women, but a man knows what's feminine, and it doesn't help if his wife is not feminine, and there are a lot of feminine women around, because it highlights her masculinity if that is the case. So it made it very easy. Apparently, they had had some private conversations where he talked to her about certain things about her femininity, and I can remember having a conversation with them at their home because them not being together just never would have even crossed my mind. They seemed like a really, really good fit in terms of just watching them live life as much as I could see them. So I was very shocked when I heard, oh, he was done and he was leaving, basically. And when I went over to their house and I talked to them, one of the things that he very quickly stated was that she's not feminine. She is just simply not feminine. One of the nicest people you ever want to meet. She would do anything for anybody. She had really, really nice personality. But unfortunately for her, her husband was looking for a femininity that she was not displaying. And I don't know how long he had been talking to her about it, but he was at the point that he was done. And I'm done with this. I'm over it. I want a feminine wife, is what he was saying. And I'm sure there were more reasons to it than why he left. But that was a big thing for him. And he left. And he didn't look back. He went on and moved on to somebody else. And that was the end of that. Here's the unfortunate thing about people who don't take correction, number one, or who are not, if we're not on the same page about this, you could very well see the same thing play out either in your life or in the lives of your children if we don't correct the behavior. So when we talk about sitting and being ladylike, a lot of that comes with whether or not, number one, we're peaceful on the inside, how we sit, how we stand, how we walk. I can move quickly to get somewhere without looking like I'm about to go and tackle somebody. And we should be able to. We shouldn't have to drag our feet and move so slow that it looks like we've given up on life. And we shouldn't move so quickly that it looks like we're about to tackle somebody. There's a balance in there where we walk, and we should pay attention to how we walk. That a man don't feel like, oh, well, let me get out of your way when you're coming. Because if that's the case, that's something that we need to change. Again, if I have respect for my husband, if I have respect for male authority, if I respect men, then I don't feel the need, and we kind of mentioned this in a bridesmaids a while back. If there's a group of men, I'm not going to walk through them. I'm not going to approach that group. I will attempt to find another route around them but I'm not going to approach them and try to get them to move out of the way, or even approach them as if I'm waiting for them to move out of the way. So those are things that we have to really, we need to see what our husbands see in us, or what a man who may be considering us as a wife will see. And this leads me right into the main point that I want to discuss for today concerning our posture and what a man sees. Have any of you, by show of hands, have any of you ever been called pushy or a bulldozer, or any word that means pushy, or you are determined to have your way, so on and so forth? By show of hands. Keep your hands up if you've ever been told that about yourself. You're going to have your way one way or another. Okay. This is what I want to point out to us. And this is why it's important for us to really deal with temper tantrums in children. So we talked about how eating coincides with the lack of self-discipline and the insecurities. And now we want to talk a little bit about how these temper tantrums that they have is a sign of bulldozing to come. So we all need to really understand why temper tantrums are not acceptable. If you know you could not maintain a relationship where a man turned away from you, or your husband has complained to you about bulldozing, you're getting out of your place, you're trying to lead me, you're pushy, you're manipulative and trying to get your way, you change your mood and your attitude to try to change my mind about things, all of that starts with the temper tantrums. When they're 7 months old, they have the capacity to express that they don't like something that you're doing. Sometimes they may yank back on a toy that you may try to pull away from them, or a bottle or something that they may have that you don't want them to have. And that's the time to start taking note of your child's ability to resist your authority. They will often start to cry because you say no, or sit down, or you can't have this, or wait, be patient. No, and when they do that, one of the worst things we could do is to try to appease them. Sometimes we may be in a position that we have to. Maybe we're in a very quiet place, like I'll just say, the sanctuary, and a sermon is being preached. And you're right on the verge of wanting to, they're trying to get their way, and if I don't do this, they're going to scream out. Well, what you do is, we have to train our children at home so that they know that they understand no at home, and that no goes with them wherever they go. It is important, but oftentimes one of the big mistakes that we as wives make, and wives to be, we just say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. They'll grow out of it. They're so cute. It's hard to say no to them. Well, they're little bulldozers in training. And if bulldozing is not working for you, it's not going to work for them. So again, we're training them. We're preparing them for marriage. And if at 2 years old, we let them get their way, and we let them dictate to us that this is what I want right now, so you give it to me, or I'm going to cry, or I'm going to scream, or I'm going to rip something or tear something, or I'll throw myself on the floor. If we allow that to be okay, then we'll see it play out even more so when they're 5 years old, when they're 7 years old, when they're 10 years old, when they're 12 years old, when they're 16, when they're 18, when they're 20, when they're an adult and they're married, they will still be doing the exact same thing. The unfortunate part is that the measures become more and more extreme. At 2 years old, I cried and I kicked. And at 4 years old, I just took what I wanted behind your back. At 10 years old, I stole out the store because you said no. At 16 years old, I punched you in the face because you said no. At 18 years old, I started doing extreme things to control you, to make you think I'll starve myself and I won't eat and I'll show you. So things get really extreme for them to get to get you to give in to them. And that stuff translates over into marriage. So when we see our children going into these depressed modes because they didn't get their way, something, they were so-called disappointed. We need to really, really, really get a handle on that. We need to address those things and we need to correct that. And the way we do it is by what we hear we've heard it in so many sermons, in so many fellowships. Sometimes we need to say no just so they will learn to hear no, and we don't have to have a reason for it, just because that is the reality of life. You are not getting this today for no apparent reason. You don't owe them an explanation. We don't need to explain it to them. They just need to hear no, not today, so that they can learn to be okay with it, so that when they get married, they're not tempted to push their husbands around. They're not tempted to manipulate him with their emotions to try to get their way. They're not tempted to manipulate situations so that they can control the outcome. They can simply be okay with, you know what, this is just the way it is today, and I'm okay with that. So that is one important thing that I really wanted to bring out today concerning our preparing for marriage, and how in everyday life, we can see these things. We know how our children are. We know the response we get when they're not getting their way. And we need to pay attention to that. And that's going to be the homework assignment for this week. Pay attention to the reaction you get from your children when they say no. When they hear you say no to them or they're not getting their way. And pay attention to your reaction when something isn't going your way. How do you respond? How do they respond? And the ultimate question is this something that we need to change? Do I have the right response? Are they able to handle that something didn't go their way and get over it and still be thankful? Or are they looking for a way to still get their way? Are they acting out? Are they going to take it out on other siblings? Does something mysteriously come up broken that wasn't broken before? Did they suddenly get a tear that the shoe is now torn up when it was in perfect condition? Did a glass break all of a sudden? Did a toy break all of a sudden? These are the things that we need to pay attention to. What happens after my child hears no? What happens after I hear no? Or something just did not quite go the way I anticipated? Am I able to still handle it? It's important that we address those things and not treat it like it's not a big deal. And we don't give them a pass just because we know that we're wrong in how we respond to things. We need to fix it. Again, we all have to be of the same judgment, of the same mind, that when I see this thing happening, it's not cute. When I see it happening, it's not going to correct itself. It's something that I need to correct. And if we have to correct it in ourselves, then we have to be honest and say, you know what? I myself am not doing well when I don't get my way. So I need to change this so that I'm not passing this curse down to my daughters, so that they in turn are not ruining relationships because they're being so selfish and so self-centered and inconsiderate of other people, that they're actually able to even be disappointed and just go on with life. because everything does not go always the way we want it to go. And so we're going to end this discussion with that. Again, pay attention. Pay attention to yourself, pay attention to your children. Because again, the temper tantrums, it is the bullying that we see taking place in the schools, and it's the bulldozing that we see taking place in marriage. That those things play out in different ways in life. And we don't want to be proponents of that. We want to teach our daughters to be ladies. We want to teach them to be wives, and not only to become a wife, but to be able to maintain and to actually be pleasing to her husband. So we will end it with that. And I will say this one thing before we close in prayer. Our presence and our purpose in this earth is meant to affect somebody's life in a positive way. So let's be dedicated to serving someone outside of ourselves, outside of our home, outside of those who we've already served and that we're closest to. Let's start with our attitude first, that nothing is beneath us, and that every service opportunity that we have, if the Lord gives us an opportunity, we will embrace it with a joyful heart, and we will take joy in being able to serve someone else, especially when we're not getting anything out of it or getting anything back in the moment. Because the truth is, when we serve, we do get something out of it. It really helps us to grow in our character. It helps us to become better people when we put more focus on other people than we put on ourselves. So even if we don't get a material something back, a material item or something in return for service, we are still getting something out of it, because it enhances our character greatly when we can put our focus on other people and do something for other people. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you again for this day, Lord. We thank you for this discussion, and we pray, Heavenly Father, that as you reveal our mindsets, Lord God, we pray that anything that's contrary to your word will be corrected, and that we can go on the path that you've called us to and live out the life that you've called us to. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.